I call the honourable member Jackie Dean.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. In speaking on the second reading of the Tasman District Council Validation and Recovery of Certain Rates Bill, I want to first commend Damien O'Connor in the way that he has worked with the Local Government and Environment Committee over what has been quite a very careful consideration of the matters raised in this bill. And members from across the House are expressing their reluctant support for the objects of the bill. And I think that is the correct position to take on this bill, because while the Parliament is here to enact legislation, I think we all feel uncomfortable with enacting retrospective legislation which picks up the pieces from a lack of due process in local government. So it's important that our Select Committee consideration of this bill and our readings in the House and our comments that we are all making on this bill reflect that, but also acknowledge that you can point the finger as much as you like and point out the deficiencies, but what matters actually in this Parliament and the bill that Damien O'Connor has brought to the House is that we find a solution for actually the ratepayers, because it's the ratepayers who are the ones that are feeling the impacts of the deficiencies in the decision-making by their local authority. And I do hear the comments of the previous speaker about capability and capacity building within the local government sector, and he's quite right. And that is why this government has brought in a broad program of better local government reforms to ensure that this kind of situation, as we see in this bill, does not arise again. It is germane also to recognise that local authorities throughout New Zealand come in many different forms and many different sizes. We do know that as a result of the Royal Commission on Auckland governance, after a process of the Commission and then Council reorganisation, I think we now have what is becoming an effective Auckland Council. It's not perfect. Of course it's not perfect, but we have a much more efficient, large, urban local authority, still with the same powers. It does have its own act, yes it does, but essentially still with the same powers as the Tasman District Council, just on a vastly different scale. Its activities are Tasman's activities. They are not Auckland activities. They probably don't want to be. They live in a very nice rural corner of provincial New Zealand on the west coast, and none of them, I imagine, is going to argue that they would want their council to be any different. The reason I'm talking about the differences between local authorities is that while we might have Tasman and we might have Mackenzie and we might have Waimate and other local authorities that are effectively tiny, and there might be one full-time planner, there might be one full-time finance officer, and when that finance person goes away on maternity leave or has to be away, goes on a course, there simply isn't anybody really to fill the gap. So I think we need to recognise that while local government is very, very different in terms of their capacity, we expect them to have the same capability in setting their rates. And why is that important? It is important because we are taking money, tax-paid money, out of ratepayers to provide them with council-provided services, such as, in this instance, stormwater and other rating matters. So we have to have every sympathy with the ratepayers of the Tasman District Council, and they have to have the confidence and should have the confidence that their elected members and the CEO and the people who work for the CEO have the capability of correctly striking the rates. In this instance, they haven't done so, and this committee has also dealt with other councils where that has not been done properly. And I just want to talk a little further about the ratepayer, because we call them ratepayers, but they are our elderly citizens. We're all, I guess, ratepayers in this House, and everybody who works here is a ratepayer. We all expect our local authorities to provide us with good services in turn for that cheque we write out every quarter, or that direct debit we provide every quarter. We expect, as ratepayers, and it doesn't matter whether we are politicians or we are somebody who is retired, like my mum-in-law, who's on a fixed, she's a superannuitant, so she's on a fixed income. She's got pay rates too, and it has a big impact on her life, arguably more so than perhaps on a politician's life. But we all expect to get good value from rates, and we expect, absolutely, that if people are going to be taking money out of our wages, our tax-paid wages, that it's done fairly, it is done for a good purpose, and it's done correctly. This Tasman District Council Validation and Recovery of Certain Rates Bill puts right those deficiencies in the decision-making of the Tasman District Council. Now, I can imagine that there's been an election between the time when this bill was lodged and Damien O'Connor was working with the council to find a solution, and now, so there might have been a number of changes in personnel, but I can guarantee that from the Mayor and the Chief Executive down, they'll be having a pretty close look at their rate-setting mechanism. It's all set out for them. It is all set out in the Local Government Act and the Local Government Rating Act. It's all set out for them. It is incumbent on them to set the rates correctly. The Better Local Government Reform package, which this national government has been working on since we came into government 5 years ago, has been to provide clarity around the role of local government. And I can't help wondering whether that focus on providing good services, good infrastructure for ratepayers is long overdue. So we have done a piece of work, the Local Government Amendment Act 2012, Minister Tremaine? Yeah? 2012. We are considering an amendment bill, 2013. It's before the Local Environment and Select Committee now. They are all part of that drive to provide better public services to ratepayers, so that ratepayers, doesn't matter whether they're in Tasman, and we are dealing with the Tasman bill at the moment, but we have dealt with other similar bills. I hope we don't have to in the future, but we may. So the better local government reforms that this national government is working hard on, and the Honourable Chris Tremaine has been an important part in that work, is aimed at stronger governance in the local government sector. It is aimed at providing greater efficiencies for ratepayers, more clarity for ratepayers, more responsible financial management, and that perhaps comes to the nub of this issue for local government. We also have a really strong desire, and let's just talk about my dear mum-in-law, let's keep rates affordable for everybody in our communities. It's okay, and I acknowledge it's okay for politicians, all of us politicians. We can afford our rates. Of course we can afford our rates. We are privileged in all sorts of ways, and we must not forget those people on fixed incomes for whom the rates bill is a big portion of their expenditure, and who expect and should expect good performance, clarity, a real purpose of local government that is there to provide good service for them. So, Mr Speaker, thank you very much. I support the Tasman District Council validation and recovery of certain rates bill. I do commend the local member for bringing it to the House, and I do hope we can get it, this bill through in a timely manner so that the ratepayers of the Tasman District Council can move forward with some certainty and confidence in their local authority.
I call the honourable member